And good evening. My name is Andrew LeBaron, and I'm creating a podcast tonight as I'm looking out my apartment window and watching the sun set. Today I'm going to be talking about the 7 billion people who live on this planet. It's sort of an overwhelming number when you start to think about the number 7 billion in human terms. For example, there's 7 billion people like me who go to sleep every night. There's 7 billion who wake up in the morning, and we're all busy going about our day. We have hopes, we have aspirations, we have dreams, we have jobs. It's just an overwhelming amount of human activity every single day. What helps me sort of relate to everyone else on the planet is to think about Maslow's pyramid of needs. First is our physiological needs, and then security and so forth. But we need those basic needs before we can experience more of life. And my writing project for the semester is about forced labor. It's about what we as the human race have to do in exchange for our basic physiological needs. We have to work at a job to provide for our food, for our shelter, and for our security. Um, and I really hope that we as the human race can perfect our economic systems so that nobody has to be afraid. Nobody has to wonder if they're going to lose their job and not be able to buy food or not be able to pay the rent. I'm going to read some stories from a recent article that describes some of the economic problems that we're facing and some positive economic solutions we're coming up with. So in June of 2008, immigrant workers are returning to farm work desperate because construction jobs are not available. This is after the economic collapse of 2008 and the housing bubble has just collapsed. So now construction is not adding workers, and the gap between construction and farm wages has narrowed, said Phil Martin, an agricultural economist at the University of California. According to the Agricultural Department, field workers in the U.S. are paid an average of $9.65 an hour. Carlos, a farm labor contractor in Grover Beach, reports that they're coming to me saying they'll take anything. Anything. These people want to put food on the table. According to the Department of Labor, over 2.5 million workers are employed on U.S. farms. 1.8 million of the 2.5 million work in crop agriculture, and 1.2 million of the 1.8 million workers were born outside of the United States. Okay, so that was a story in 2008. Immigrant workers are returning to the farm. Let's bounce around here and find another story. In the year 1995, Sam is a business owner, and he was struggling to find employees. He had 8 positions that could not be filled no matter how much he advertised. So in July of 1996, Sam put out an advertisement and he said, I will pay my employees 40 hours labor for 30 hours of work. So I'll give you a full-time salary for working 30 hours a week. He had great success with his 30-40 week plan, and not only hired the employees he needed, but he also was able to save 250. He was able to save 250 resumes on file for whenever he needed new employees. So this is a quote from one of his employees. It gives me time for myself, time with my grandchildren, and time for projects I had put off but always thought I would have time to do later in life. I really appreciate that. Happy employees make productive workers. Mary Gardner of the Christian Science Monitor writes the following about productivity under the 30-40 week plan. Since July of 1996, when the 30-40 week plan took effect, Morris has tracked impressive gains in productivity. Customers' return in the second half of the year dropped from 72% from the first half. So what it's saying is the returns from customers who had placed orders dropped from 72%, which means they're receiving a much higher quality product that they have no desire to return because the employees at Sam's company are doing a much better job. The article goes on further to say internal costs for parts that need additional work have also steadily dropped, with 79% reduction in November. So Sam's, ever since he did this 30-40 plan, his company has tracked impressive gains in not only productivity but also the quality, which uh, his the employees are happy at Sam's company, and Sam's happy because his productivity up. So this is a really good example um, of something positive in the United States and in the economy is people getting more time. It's clear that there were a lot of people who valued having to work 30 hours a week, and where before he had nobody willing to take the job, now he has 250 people applying. It's also interesting to note that in the year 1995, he was having a hard time finding people to work at his plant. But just 5 years later, this brings us to the next article. In the year 2000, let's see. In the year 2000, employees desperately need more foreign-born workers. Tens of thousands of immigrants slipped through the southern borders in hopes of a better life. As of September 2000, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the number of immigrants working in the U.S. is 15.7 million. Nearly 5 million of these immigrant workers are considered illegal immigrants. Immigrant workers now make up a massive 12% of the nation's workforce. Minimum wage or time and a half overtime to immigrants required to work 70 to 80 hours a week. Some female immigrants have complained that their bosses sexually harass them, and they fear if they complain, their bosses will report them to the Immigration and Naturalization Service. So at the same time that there's hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border in search of work, there's also a great need for foreign-born workers. This is in the year 2000. Also, it talks about immigrants not being required to work 70 to 80 hours a week, not getting paid minimum wage, and also some female immigrants who are afraid that their bosses will sexually harass them or report them to naturalization services. If we skip ahead 10 years, you'll see in the state of Texas, companies in Texas are forced to seek alternative ways to hire employees so that they can maintain operations. San Antonio Express reports from Chesapeake Energy Corp in Weatherford. Chesapeake Energy Corp's Senior Director Adam Haynes explains, "We are having to offer CDL training in-house. Women are welcome to apply, including for jobs on drilling rigs. I don't know that we have ever had a woman on a rig now, but we will hire women if they qualify." So here we have a story in Texas where the Chesapeake Energy Corp is struggling to find employees. Now, I have family members who personally work in the oil industry, which Chesapeake Energy Corp has oil rigs. And this company is saying they'll hire women to work on their rigs, which they've never done before. And they're willing to train any employees who are willing to come. They're that desperate for workers. And this is just a few years after the 2008 decline. So I hope you're getting a sense from these stories that even with the 2008 collapse, where the housing bubble crashed and thousands returned to work on farms, thousands of people are crossing the southern borders in search of a better life. But at the same time, we have companies who desperately need employees. There's this economy that loses a ton of jobs in certain sectors, but in other sectors, it desperately needs workers. It's this constant turmoil. It's the grinding of this huge economic machine. It's creating a lot of friction, and people have to find their place in this machine. And I hope you don't take this podcast as a criticism of capitalism. I think capitalism is an incredibly efficient system, and I truly believe that it has proved historically to be superior to a lot of other economic systems in the way that it motivates it encourages innovation, it motivates people and it's very efficient and very motivational. So this is not an attack of capitalism, but it's just we're just trying to consider everything that happens in our economic environment today. This can change. This can be improved upon. And these are interesting stories. Let's go here to another story about an employer who offers 30-hour work weeks. So in August 26th of 2016, the Washington Post announces Amazon will soon launch a program to experiment with a 30-hour work week for select employees. These 30-hour workweek employees will have salary and not be paid by the hour. They will receive the same benefits of the 40-hour workers, but they will receive only 75% of the pay. The entire team, including managers, will work for 30 hours a week. This offers an opportunity to tap into people that wouldn't normally work because the way you structure the work week. So, for example, maybe mothers who are staying at home who can't fit a 40-hour work week into their schedule. They may be able to fit a 30-hour work week into their schedule. So as we can see, the, the the workplace and the demand for labor and just our entire economic system is struggling for balance. Companies are being forced to entice their employees in offering them lower work weeks. It's clear that the 40-hour work week is stressful. Not everyone wants to accept that standard. It's also clear that there's many immigrants who are working 70 to 80 hours a week, and they're being paid less than minimum wage. So what I'm trying to get at with all these stories is, like I say, our economic system has up and downs. It can be harsh and cruel to some people, and then it can be benevolent and forgiving to others. We all depend on the system every day for our lives, and I think that there can be a lot done to improve it. Within the capitalistic system we have, if we could eliminate fear, if we could eliminate the fear of being on the street or the fear of not having food, then I think we could go great ways. We could move forward and out of an unnecessary period of time that we're in. Historically, people have always had to work for their food. They've always had to struggle to meet their basic physiological needs. But we now live in a time where farming and technology can supply enough food for everyone on this planet. If you think that 7 billion people is a lot, but I just read an article that every human on this whole planet can fit in the larger city of New York, the larger region, including the islands, Manhattan Islands, all of that. So 7 billion people can fit in a very small space, and we have enough land, we have enough resources, we have enough technology to supply for all of us. And I'm not suggesting anything communistic here, but I just think that when there's a food that's stocked to the ceilings with a store that's stocked to the ceilings with food, I don't think anyone in the world should go hungry. And I think our capitalistic system can accomplish that. So hopefully you found these articles interesting, and maybe I'll catch you in another podcast. Thanks.